This is the Haulin Assets podcast where we show you how to start and run your own trucking company. Ever wanted to go out on your own? Follow Chris as he goes through the highs and lows of running on his own authority. Welcome, everybody. Welcome back to the Haulin Assets podcast. It's been a hot minute, but we are here. I am Craig. He is
Chris.
Chris, welcome back.
It's good to be back. I don't think I've seen you with this big of a smile in quite some time. Is it because the baseball season's going again?
There is such a thing as baseball, as long as you're not in St. Louis or Miami, is it? No, it's the Rays, I think. Anyway, whatever. Yes, baseball is back. But you know what? So is trucking, Chris. It's been
back.
3 weeks. You know, forgive us, listeners, for we have sinned. It has been 3 weeks since our last episode.
3 weeks since we've recorded, but I think we only missed two.
Oh, okay.
2 podcast episodes.
All right.
We cheated last time and recorded 2 episodes at the same time.
Chris is pulling back the curtain. All right. Well, today we are talking in episode 57 about how an owner-operator should grow a trucking company, which is pretty broad, right? But you have a specific angle in mind, something that you want to talk about today.
I've got a specific methodology that I think is really good. You know, one of the most common mistakes I see owner operators make when they try to grow into a fleet is they try to grow too fast and they try to jump out of the truck a little too quick.
Okay. All right. So that is what we're going to be talking about today, but you have in mind a few of these how to grow your trucking company episodes coming down the pike, right?
Yeah, I think it's going to be spread out over the next year, but over the next year, I plan on growing Haulin Assets a little bit. So it's going to be a reoccurring theme, a reoccurring topic. And in this episode, I really just kind of want to introduce a little bit about that concept, a little bit about my methodology, so that you've really kind of got something to think about as you know, if you plan on doing this yourselves, you can kind of think about how you want to go about doing this. And so hopefully we'll give you some good ideas and some things to think about. All
right. Well, as we get into that, don't forget to go to HaulinAssetsLLC.com for full show notes of this and past episodes. Find us on Facebook. And in either of those places, you can comment, and we'd be happy to see what you guys would like us to cover, what questions you have, what topics you are interested in. We can make episodes, until we're blue in the face. But if listeners have things that they want us to cover, we'll be happy to look into that as well. So let's see, am I forgetting anything? No, I think I covered all the housekeeping.
Yeah,
so, Chris, did you? Let's see, have you been out on the road recently?
It's been a minute, but I did go out a little while ago. It was one of those situations where Mike brought the truck in, late one night. It had a delivery the next morning. We want to get his 34-hour reset rolling. So I went and delivered the load, and it ended up being pretty cool because I delivered the load. It was actually had about 150 miles to go from Salt Lake down into a little bit further southern part of Utah, and it's kind of central Utah. I get down there, I unload the load and start driving back to Utah, and Jake calls me up.
This is your dispatcher.
This is the dispatcher. Just as I'm hitting I-15, and he says, "Hey, I found a load. There's a guy that needs something hauled." And I was about 100 miles away, but it was basically just go pick it up and then take it back up into the Salt Lake Valley and deliver it that same night. So I'm like, yeah, let's take it. It was $900, and I think I drove a total of about maybe 250 miles
after you picked it up.
Well, no, it was 100 miles to pick it up and about another 150 back to the Salt Lake. So it was, from where the deadhead and everything was about 250 miles, $900. It was a good load. But as part of that, after I got to the delivery place, I saw something pretty interesting, kind of sketchy.
Okay. All right.
So what I was hauling was this big bulk bags of this white powdery substance.
Nice. Okay, so I'm going to go with flour or talc or...
It wasn't either of those, but it wasn't cocaine. I wasn't hauling cocaine. It was legal. But anyway, it was, so they're these big bulk bags. They're these kind of look like flour bags, but they're huge, and they weigh about 1,000 pounds each. They pack 20 of them into the truck. They double stack most of them. And anyway, I get to the place, I deliver it, and they start taking them off of my truck and go load them on, some of them onto a pickup truck. So there's this flatbed pickup truck.
Okay.
They load
Which might take 2 of those.
Well, that's what you'd think. Legally, they'd probably take 2 of those. But they ended up putting 4 of them on the bed of the truck. So 8,000 pounds.
Oh, my gosh.
Well, no, let's see.
Or that's 4,000 pounds.
Well, but it was 8 of them.
Oh,
They're all
okay.
1,000 pounds each. So they did double stack them on the pickup truck, too.
Nice.
So you have 8,000 pounds on this. It looked like a 3,500 Chevy, pickup truck. Luckily it was a dually, which is
low rider.
So yeah, it's like totally maxed out. Then they had this rinky-dink trailer that they were pulling, and they put 8 more of them on the trailer. So, obviously, especially on the truck part.
Have you ever seen a pickup truck cry?
Yeah, I don't think it made it out of the parking lot. Anyway, I got a good picture of it. We'll post it on the Facebook here in the next day or two, so people can see if I'm as crazy as I think it is, or if that was as crazy as I think it was. It's just a huge capacity. I mean, just on the truck, 8,000 pounds, and those trucks only have like a 4,000 pound payload capacity, so at least double what it should be carrying.
You're saying that there's a reason that you have to pay so much to get a decent truck and trailer that can actually haul that plus more.
Yeah, that kind of of weight is not.
That's why you're not driving around in a Silverado or whatever. Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I'll be interested to see that picture. You should send that over. Okay, cool. So, Chris, shall we get into the topic today?
Let's get into the topic.
All right. So you want to talk about how to grow your trucking company, but not too fast.
Not too fast. You got to be methodical about it.
The eager beaver approach is not what people should be doing here.
Yeah, it's definitely not. And that's going to be one of the topics, the kind of the timing and how quickly you should do it. What are the triggers that say, okay, it's time to add a truck? Those are going to be topics that we talk a little bit in more detail further on down the road.
Yeah.
But today I kind of just want to talk a little bit about the methodology, and specifically, kind of when does it make the most sense to, as an owner operator, step out of the truck and stop driving. And I think the approach that I'm going to talk about is the most financially sound method of doing it, for a couple different reasons, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
Now, this is going to be following the pattern that you have followed yourself?
No.
Oh.
I'm going to be a little bit of a hypocrite on this one.
When you said that, I mean, as you introduced the topic, I was like, wait a minute. Chris got out of his truck post haste.
Yeah, I did. But I'm obviously not like most owner operators. My life circumstances are a little bit different. Most owner operators that I've worked with and helped out in the past, they really just have one thing that they're focusing on. It's that truck, and then that trucking company that they're trying to build and they're trying to grow. Where me, I've got 5 other businesses I'm actively involved in at this point. I just don't have the ability to follow this plan the way that I lay it out, even though I think it's the best way to go about doing it for most people. I just can't do that. And then also, I'm not going to be able to prove this out by doing it myself. So you're just going to kind of have to.
This is a do as I say, not as, or do as I would do. Do as I say, do as I would do, right?
Do as I say, not as I'm actually going to do. But with that being said, I am confident that this is the most financially sound way to go from 1 truck to 5 trucks.
Okay. All right. So you've got a method here. Let's talk about that method then.
So it's really simple. Like I've said in the past, one of the issues I constantly see that happens with small trucking companies and that gets them into trouble is that they try to grow too fast. And so they're trying to add trucks a little bit too quickly, and they're not being methodical about how they're doing it. And that's usually because the owner operator, the owner of the trucking company, tries to get out of the truck and off the road a little bit too fast.
So you've said this several times now. They're getting out too fast. Don't get out too fast. How fast is too fast? Do we have a solid number here?
I see guys try to get out on that first truck, kind of like what I did. They'll drive for a little while, then they'll hire a driver and then just stay home and try to dispatch that 1 truck. Well, there's not enough profit in 1 truck to really sustain the owner of a trucking company. You've got to have more than 1 truck. That if you try to just survive off of those profits of the 1 truck, the profits, as we've seen in my company, they aren't super stable. And so, 1 month you'll have a really good month. The next month you'll have a really bad month. As you add more trucks to your fleet, you're going to have, say you add 2 trucks, and I'm just going to kind of oversimplify this, but say you've got 2 trucks and one truck has a bad month one month, and that the other truck has a good month that month, they kind of even each other out a little bit.
Sure.
And so as you add the number of trucks to your fleet, you kind of even out that rockiness of the profitability.
And so you're evening out the profitability ups and downs, but hopefully that line is still going up and to the right at least a little bit.
It should be, and it's just going to stabilize. It's going to become a little bit more predictable, and so things get a little bit better that way as you add trucks to your company.
Interesting. So our financials episodes would be even more boring to those who find them boring if you had 5 trucks.
They would be, yeah, because everything would start to normalize and be a little bit more consistent, because you're gonna have one truck making up for another truck when there's a bad month.
Right. To be clear, I love our financials episodes, and I think everybody else should too. Okay, so talk to me more about this method. You've talked about we don't want to do it too soon. 2 trucks is not enough. How many trucks is enough?
I think an owner-operator should drive to a certain extent, at least until they have 5 trucks. And I think they should be driving almost full time all the way through 3 trucks. And so here's how I think it should work. So you've got, most owner operators, when they first start out, they're going to have their 1 truck and they're going to drive it. And then when they add a second truck, the way that I think it should happen is they just hire a second driver. And so you've got the owner operator driving 1 truck, the second driver driving a second truck. The thing where it can start to change, where I think it starts to make sense, is on that 3rd truck. So on that 3rd truck, you can hire a driver to drive the 3rd truck. And once that driver's kind of in the truck, they've stabilized, you feel like the driver's a good driver and they're going to stick around for a while, then you can at that point hire a 3rd driver. So you've got 3 trucks, 3 drivers.
So you were talking about having 2 trucks, and then you got 2 reliable employees,
2
and you
reliable
buy a
employees,
3rd truck.
Buy a 3rd truck, and you get that 3rd employee in
Okay.
there.
All right.
And so then with that 3rd truck, what happens at that point is, here's where I think the key to this, making this method the most successful and the best method to go by, is that the owner of the company at that point, when one of your drivers takes a few days off, you jump in that truck and keep that truck moving. So, we've talked a little bit about, on average, most months, my truck has run about 20 days a month. It puts on about 11,000 miles in a month. That's kind of average.
Yeah.
And so if you add, if you're able to take that truck out one more short trip, like say a 3-day trip, and you can average about 600 miles a day, that means you're putting another 1,800 miles a month on that truck. So instead of driving just 11,000 miles, you're driving 12,800 miles.
And increasing the profitability of each of those 3 trucks
and
that are being driven by others most of the time.
So I think at a minimum, you should drive, as the owner operator, you should take each one of those trucks on at least 1 3-day trip a month, ideally 2, so that if you're able to do it twice a month on each truck, that means you're going to be on the road for about another 18 days. So maybe not quite as much as you normally would if you're just dedicated to 1 truck, but pretty close. You should, at a minimum 9, ideally 18 days.
So this sounds like you've got 3 trucks and 3.5 or 4 drivers, yourself included. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's correct. And so then you can keep those trucks driving on a more consistent basis. They're putting more miles on each month, there's one part of that that's really obvious. The more miles, the more you're going to get paid. But the thing that most people don't take into account is how that affects your fixed costs and your overall profitability.
Okay. Well, right, because your fixed costs are fixed no matter what. You're going to pay those regardless of how much you're out on the road and how much you're making, but your variable costs, those are going to shift.
Yep. So if you think about it, you remember what the fixed costs are, like some of the most common ones?
Like your insurance, your truck payment, trailer payment.
Yep. Truck, trailer, your truck insurance, your workers' compensation insurance. And then you've got some other miscellaneous fixed costs, like maybe parking or your pre-pass expenses and some of those other things that happen. So yeah, those are your fixed costs. And they're, for the most part, they're pretty much the same every month. It doesn't matter how many miles. If you drive 1 mile or you drive 15,000 miles, you're going to pay that same amount for each one of those.
Now, I want to go back to something you said. You said that for you, the third and a half or the fourth driver of this 3-truck fleet, I guess we're calling it, you said you want to take the shorter trips, right? Yep. So those 18 days that you're out on the road, maybe they're full days, maybe they're partial, but sounds like you're sticking pretty close to home. Is that harder to do, harder to find good loads that are short trips? It
kind of depends a little bit on what part of the country you're in. But for me, for example, I can get up into like the Portland area of Oregon, or easy, the eastern side of Oregon, Washington, even up into the Seattle area. I can typically get up there and back to Utah in 3 days.
Right.
So I drive all one day. The second day I drive just a little bit, drop off a load, pick up another load, drive a little bit back, and then I can be all the way back on the third day, and typically even deliver the load on that third day, especially if it's Portland. If you get up into Washington, it may be a little bit tighter.
And for those who don't know, we're talking from Salt Lake City here.
Salt Lake City, yeah. And with that being said too, I can pretty easily find 4-day trips too into like Kansas City. I can make it out and back to Kansas City pretty easy. And those are all areas that most of the time it's fairly easy to find at least decent, okay paying loads out and back. So it's not that hard to do.
Right. Okay. All right.
And you can even, one of the things that people are going to say, well, my driver's not going to want to sit that long. Well, you know what? There's some things you can do with that. If you look at how much more profitable your truck is, it may be better to say, hey, I'll pay you $100, stay home an extra day. You get an extra day off, you get an extra $100, and it makes my truck significantly more profitable when we do that.
Right. Okay. So speaking of which, you were talking about fixed versus variable costs, and yeah, I kind of get that. Look, I'm not as smart as you, Chris, and I don't run 5 businesses, but so I was hoping you would remind me a little bit about that. Maybe we can talk about some numbers, because I'm curious about how that scales. And you were talking about kind of smoothing out that volatility when you add more trucks to your business. So let's back up a little bit and talk about the fixed and variable costs, and provide some examples just for a one truck owner operator, and then kind of expound on that.
Yeah, so we'll start and look at this just really kind of from the one truck perspective, because obviously just adding more trucks is just going to multiply those figures. It's not going to change things, but we'll just look at it from a one truck perspective. So if you take, for example, and I'm going to use my actual numbers in these examples. And if you go onto the website, haulinassetsllc.com, and you look for episode 57, I'll have some images where you can see these numbers that I'm talking about. I'm a visual learner, so it's easier for me if I'm looking at this as it's being explained to me.
Right. So that was a very smooth plug, by the way, for Haulin Assets LLC.com. That was a good plug, wasn't it? You know what we need,
Chris? I could do this podcasting for a living.
We need an advertiser so that we can do these really fun transitions. Be like, so I do about 11,000 miles a month. And speaking of which, that's why you should get Quip toothbrushes.
There you go. Yeah, I like it. We should find a sponsor.
Okay, sorry. Go on with your numbers.
All right. So, if you look at my typical month, I run 11,000 miles in a month. My fixed costs when I do that come out to be about 41 cents a mile.
Okay.
And I've got this broken down. You can see it in a little bit more detail on the website. But then if I'm able to jump up to, that extra 3 days and that extra 600 miles a day, which is about 1,800 miles over 3 days, that actually spreads that fixed expense over more miles. So what that does is it takes that fixed expense from 41 cents a mile to about 35 cents a mile, almost 6 cents a mile savings.
Okay, so if I'm doing my quick math here, that's a seventh of that. What are we talking about? 13% reduction or something like that? That's a significant reduction.
It's pretty significant. And you'll be able to see how significant that is when we kind of go into the revenue examples. But it's a big deal. If you're able to take that truck twice during a month, so 2 of those 3-day trips, and you add an extra 3,600 miles that you're spreading that expense out, it takes it almost down to 31 cents a mile on fixed cost. So it's over
41.
It's over a 10 cent a mile savings.
And so what does that net you as far as actual dollar amount then?
I'm glad you asked that question, so let's kind of keep that to the side, just kind of keep that in the back of our minds that, as we add more miles in a month, that reduces our fixed costs.
Sure.
And so what that's going to do, it's going to increase our overall profitability. It's going to, you hear in accounting, the bottom line is what matters. That bottom line is your net income. And that's really what's going to see the biggest impact. If you think about it, one of the things that I learned that somebody taught me early on in business is that for every dollar of expense that you save, that translates into $1 of net income. So that translates 1-to-1 into another dollar of profitability. That's not the same with revenue. If you increase what you sell or you increase the amount of business you do by $1, there's expenses that are tied into that dollar, and you may only get 20 cents of net income off of that increase in $1 of additional revenue. And so you're always going to see the biggest impact when you can save money in your costs and your expenses.
Okay. All right. So let's take this a little bit further then. Okay. So you're making a little more profit now because you're getting a few extra days out on the road with the truck. How do we want to go into multiple trucks now and talk about how that's affected?
Let's just keep it simple and still stick to the one truck, but let's kind of use that example, kind of a similar type thing. Let's look at a normal example of 11,000 miles in a month.
Yep.
I'm going to use $1.85 as my all-in mile rate because that's about
this is your revenue. You're talking about revenue now, talking about revenue, your expenses.
Now. Yep. So we're gonna talk about revenue, and then we're gonna break it down to expenses, and then show how that translates into net income.
Gotcha.
So, my revenue overall all-in rate per mile. For my first year was about $1.85. It was actually a little bit higher than that, not quite $1.86, but we're going to use $1.85. Close enough. All right. So if we take $1.85 a mile and we look at 11,000 miles
over the 20 days in that month that you're out on the road,
over the 20 days that we're over the road in that month, that translates into $20,350 in total revenue.
$20,350. Okay.
Yep.
I'm trying to lock that number in.
And if I use my variable expenses for what I experienced over the first year, it was about $1.20 a mile. That results in $13,200 in variable costs for that 11,000 miles that you're running.
That was your variable expenses. Now we got to add your fixed expenses in, right?
Yep. And my fixed expenses, now you remember, this is going to stay the same whether I run 20 days and 11,000 miles or 23 days and 12,800 miles, so on and so forth. It's $4,506.51.
Okay, so what does that translate to as far as net income then?
So then that brings in a net income of $2,643.49
over the course of the month. Okay,
over the course of the month. So that's about average, and that's probably about what I experienced over that first year.
Right, with plenty of fluctuation,
but
but
some
as
months
an average
were
number,
double that. Other months were significantly less than that. It fluctuated.
Okay, all right.
So then you add that extra 3 days and that extra 1,800 miles. That brings in 23,680 miles. Or dollars, excuse me, not miles.
Yeah, this
dollars.
is going to get confusing. Please go to HaulinAssetsLLC.com and look at the chart.
So that's the revenue. I'm not going to break down the variable and fixed expense. Go look at it. But what it does is it increases the profitability to $3,813.49. So that's an additional $1,170 of profit.
Okay, this is interesting. Let me see if I can break this down so that even I can understand it. You tell me if I'm getting this right. You, with the first 11,000 miles on the truck, you made $2,600 in net income.
Yep.
That's your profit.
That's the money that matters. That's what matters.
That's your net income. Okay, now, with the 1,800 miles after that, 1,800 versus 11,000, right? So not nearly as much. 1,800 miles after that, you made $1,100, almost $1,200 versus 26. So what you're saying is that the extra miles that you're able to do that month are way more profitable, potentially, caveat, potentially way more profitable because those fixed expenses are already paid for.
Yep. Exactly. It's way more profitable. So you take, for example, just to bring it down a little bit easier, in that 20 days, you're making a little over $100 a day in net profit.
Yeah.
But in those last 3 days, it's $390 a day in net income.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So it's big. And let's go to the extra 6 days.
Okay,
on
so
that
you're doing
truck.
this twice a month. You're going out on these short loads twice a month as the owner.
Yep.
Okay.
That increases the net income to almost $5,000 for the month. So almost double. So that extra 6 days, you almost double your net income.
That's another $1,000 or $1,100 on top of it's about what we're looking at for the other.
Yeah, it's about
miles.
Another $1,200 for those extra 3 days. But in that 6 day period, you've almost doubled your net income.
So okay, I think if I'm looking at the big picture here, you were painting a picture earlier of 3 trucks and 4 drivers, with yourself included as the owner. And what you're saying is that your 3 drivers that, are reliable and wonderful and you love them and they drive 20 days a month on average, whatever, they are making you X profit.
Yep.
But then when you get in that truck and keep that truck going for an extra 3 days or 6 days a month, your profitability now has shot way up as that 4th driver.
Yeah.
Is that about right?
That's exactly it. And so that gives you more net income. I mean, you think about it, if you've got 3 trucks that are each getting you $5,000 a month in profit, you can use that profit. I mean, that's $15,000 a month. You can use that profit to further grow and just make it easier and easier to add more units and eventually get to the point where you can completely work yourself out of driving the truck. It's just not going to happen overnight.
Right.
If you do it this methodical way, your profitability is way higher and it makes for some healthy growth. And that's what's important. That's what most people don't do. Usually when guys grow trucking companies, they do it in a very unhealthy, financially unsafe manner. This is a financially healthy and safe way to do it.
And does this, I imagine this would be, gosh, I'm putting myself in the shoes of this owner operator who's got 3 trucks and 3 drivers, and they're, bringing in a lot more profit themselves as the 4th driver. But as you grow to the 4th truck and the 5th truck, are you able as the owner to scale that? Or like if you take the step back and say, okay, I'm not going to drive much, if at all, anymore because I've got 5 trucks, 7 trucks, do you have to kind of just live with not having that extra profit anymore and just say, okay, well, the trucks are going to do fine enough on those 20 or 21 days that it'll be all right?
Well, if you as a driver, as the owner operator, the owner of the company, kind of start to step out around that 3, let's say you've done that for a while with your 3 trucks and you add a 4th truck. Then once you add the 4th truck, even if those trucks are only able to maintain that normal level of profitability, which is roughly, $2,600 a month, that's still over $10,000 a month in net income with 4 trucks.
Right.
And so at that point, you can kind of sustain your financial lifestyle. The company's churning enough profit that you're not dependent on that extra. Yeah, you're not dependent on it. So you can step out at that point and not kill the company and not just kind of bleed the company dry. That's a lot of the times what happens when owner operators make that transition to, trying to transition from a single owner operator into a small fleet, is they do it so quickly and they jump out of the truck so quickly that now all of a sudden their personal lifestyle and their personal expenses starts to bleed the company dry of its profits.
That's interesting. Okay, because when you are still driving the truck, you are still contributing to the net income, or you're still to the gross income, which contributes to a wider net income margin. But when you stop driving, suddenly you are, this is obviously way oversimplifying, but you're essentially not an asset, but
You're a liability to a certain extent,
because you want to get paid.
And the other thing you need to take into account with that is when you're still driving, you're doing those 18 days on the road, you're still earning and paying yourself as a driver.
Oh, okay.
And so you're still
making money.
You're still making money as a driver, and so you're not having to use the net income to pay for your rent, your mortgage, your car payments, or whatever else that you've got. Once you actually stop driving, then you pretty much have to rely solely on the profitability of the company and those profits. And so you want to make sure your profits are a level high enough that you can do that without, putting the company in financial peril.
Awesome. Well, okay, this is, I think you've done a great job, Chris, of explaining this in a way that even I can understand. No, I'm serious. I'm serious. I think this is really valuable info. And for those listening, I probably should have said this at the beginning, but if you're listening and you're not quite at this step yet, that's okay. Just absorb this information and know this. Start to build your roadmap, right? Even if you're just getting out on your own and starting up as an owner operator, if this is where you want to end up, then just know that this is the best way that we know how to do it.
Yeah, I think if guys will follow this process, they're more likely to have success, and they're not going to run into some of the other problems that I see happen all the time, because people just try to, one, grow too quickly, and two, owner operators try to get out of the truck a little bit too quickly.
Yeah.
You have to be methodical. You have to be willing to make those sacrifices that you need to make to get to where you want to be. I mean, you always have to be thinking long term. Obviously, this is a long term strategy, and so it's important to start planning for it now. Planning for when you're going to add that second truck. What do you need to add that second truck and the third truck, and so on and so forth. It takes time. It takes thought. It takes discipline to get to that point, but there's nobody out there. I truly believe if you follow this process and you follow the methodology that we've been going over for the last year and a half at this point, you can get there. It's just you've got to be smart about it.
This is good. I feel like this is a good stopping point. So do we want to wrap this up at all, or do you feel like we've already put a bow on this?
I feel like there's a bow on it. What do you think?
Yeah, no, it's good. I don't think I could sum it up any better. Your truck is your revenue driver. Keep it going as much as you can, no matter how many you start adding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keep them going as much as you can.
The more days you can keep it on the road, and the more miles you can get, just the profitability goes up. I mean, if something happens so that you can keep a truck going on the road 29 days out of the month, it's just that's going to be another big chunk of profit in your pocket, and you can use that to further growth, or live, maybe bring some of that money home, and
there you go,
and do something fun with it.
Well, awesome. This is an excellent topic, and this is just the first part of it that we're addressing. I know you said you want to get into more detail on stuff around this topic, so people can look forward to that. And I hope that they will subscribe if they haven't done so already, and make sure you tell your friends about it. If you enjoy the show, if you like what we're doing here, if you find it helpful or interesting or thought-provoking at all, then tell your friends. That's the best thing you could do, the best compliment you could give us. The second best would be to go and give us a 5-star review and leave a nice glowing review and all that stuff. And go find us on Facebook. Go to HaulinAssetsLLC.com, leave us a little note, tell us how awesome I am as the dumb guy on the show.
Craig wants to see his name in the reviews. That's what it boils down to. I'm still angling to get my name and face on the side of the Haulin Assets truck. One day it's going to happen. But we're going to have to get to at least a 3 or 4 truck fleet before I can talk about that. Okay. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We will see you, presumably, hopefully, in a week. In a week or two. Yeah, absolutely.
See you, Chris.
See you.